Her best friend showed me a photo at our rehearsal dinner. Vanessa. Cabo. Shirtless guy. Not a memory, a timestamp. 2 weeks ago. The same night she sent me a voice memo saying how much she missed me. That was when I knew. She hadn't gone on a spa weekend with her mom. She'd gone back to an ex. And she thought I'd never find out. My name's Eric. I was supposed to get married in 2 days. Instead, I watched the truth unfold like a slideshow I didn't ask to see. Melissa was slurring her words, laughing at everything. She shoved her phone toward me and said, "You were such a good sport about the boat day. Vanessa said you were cool with it. Most guys would have freaked." Then she scrolled and handed me the screen. That was the moment my whole life cracked in half. Because it wasn't a picture of Vanessa and her mom on a sunset cruise like she'd told me. It was Vanessa, on some yacht in Cabo, wrapped around a shirtless guy with tribal tattoos and a tequila bottle pressed against his thigh. The look on her face wasn't guilty or bashful. It was free, careless, like someone who didn't have a ring in her purse and a fiancée waiting at home. I stared at the photo, silent, felt my chest tighten, like I just swallowed gravel. Her friend, I'll call her Melissa, was already laughing at something else, stumbling over to the bar, completely unaware she'd just dropped a live grenade into the middle of my future. And I was left standing there, tux jacket over one arm, glass in the other, watching a slideshow in my mind of every moment I thought I knew her. Her name's Vanessa. And up until 20 minutes before, I would have told you she was the love of my life. We met at a friend's engagement party, ironic, right? She was in red. I was the guy wearing the wrong shoes. She teased me about it, and I told her she looked like trouble. We danced. We talked. And 2 weeks later, we were inseparable. I've always been steady, raised by a single dad who taught me to show up, work hard, and never make promises you can't keep. Vanessa? She was fire. Restless, charismatic, impossible not to watch when she walked into a room. I grounded her. She lit me up. At least, that's what I thought we were doing for each other. So when she said her mom was planning a girls' trip before the wedding, I didn't question it. "Just me and Mom," she said. "Some spa time, pool drinks, maybe a little shopping. Take all the time you need," I told her. "Soak it in." And she did. Or so I thought. She sent one selfie, her and her mom in sunglasses by the resort pool. I remember thinking how stiff she looked in it. The kind of smile you paste on when someone else is watching. But I brushed it off. For 4 days, I barely heard from her. Spa day. Phone's off. She'd text. Or just a heart emoji and a palm tree. I didn't press. Didn't want to be that guy. But now, standing in that ballroom with the scent of buttercream frosting and fake florals in the air, I realized I should have asked more questions. I should have known the silence meant something. I excused myself, walked outside, phone still in hand. Stared at the photo again. Her body language told the whole story. She wasn't resisting him. She was leaning in. The timestamp matched her second night away. The same night she sent me a voice memo saying how much she missed me. I didn't go back inside. Not yet. My head was buzzing too loud. I just walked. Around the back of the venue, past the caterers smoking by the loading dock, out to the gravel parking lot where our wedding planner had put up a sign that said, "Forever starts tomorrow." I stood in front of that sign, reading it over and over like it might tell me what to do. My heart didn't break all at once. It cracked, slow, quiet, like a floorboard under too much weight. Then my phone buzzed. It was Vanessa. She texted, "Where'd you go? Everyone's looking for you. Yellow heart." And that's when I realized she didn't think she'd done anything wrong. Or worse, she thought I'd never find out. And now? Now I had to decide whether to pretend I didn't see that photo or ask the one question I wasn't sure I wanted the answer to. Who was that man? I didn't respond to her text right away. I couldn't. Instead, I stared at the screen like it was a foreign language. That little yellow heart at the end, like she was still in our story, still playing her part, while I stood outside in the dark realizing the whole thing might have been scripted. I took a breath. A long one. Then I typed back. "Need a minute." Something came up. It wasn't a lie. Just not the kind she'd expect. I made my way to the far end of the parking lot and called Mark, my best man, the guy who'd known me since middle school, back when life's biggest betrayal was someone switching lunch tables without warning. He picked up on the second ring. "Yo, everything good? Where'd you disappear to?" I told him to come outside. Alone. When he saw my face, he didn't joke. Just walked up slow and asked, "What happened?" I handed him the phone. The photo was still pulled up. He stared at it for a beat, then said, "That's not her mom." "No," I said. No, it's not. He exhaled, passed the phone back, and ran a hand through his hair. Jesus. I nodded. Are you sure this wasn't, like, an old picture? Timestamp says 2 weeks ago. During her girls' trip. Melissa showed it to me like I'd already seen it. Thought I was in on the joke. Mark didn't say anything for a while. Then he asked, you want to blow this up tonight? And that's the question, isn't it? Because in that moment, standing there with the whole night humming just on the other side of the wall, her family inside, the slideshow of our childhood photos looping over the bar, people clinking glasses and toasting the future, I had a choice. I could cause a scene, call her out, watch the whole thing burn down in front of everyone. Or I could wait, get answers, hold on to the truth like a card up my sleeve. I chose to wait, because part of me, the part still holding on to the girl I proposed to, needed to hear her say it. So I went back inside, smiled where I had to, shook hands, laughed at a toast I barely heard. Vanessa found me near the dessert table. Where'd you go? She asked, soft, her hand slipping into mine like nothing had changed. Just needed some air. She tilted her head. Everything okay? And that's when I looked at her. Really looked at her. There wasn't a flicker of guilt in her eyes. Just that same warm charm she always carried. The kind that made people trust her, and maybe made her believe she deserved that trust no matter what. I'm good, I said. You having fun? She smiled wide. Best night of my life. I almost laughed. Instead, I excused myself again an hour later and headed home early. Said I had to double-check some final details. She didn't question it. That night, I pulled out the notebook I'd used for wedding plans and turned to a blank page. Wrote the date of her trip at the top. Then started listing what I knew, the timestamp, the photo, the location, the friend who showed it. Then I wrote, who is he? I didn't sleep much. Kept the phone next to me like it might ring with an answer. By morning, I'd done what I told myself I wouldn't. I found him. It didn't take long. A reverse image search, a tagged photo on Melissa's profile, and boom, his name. Troy. A friend of a friend from her college days. Former travel blogger, now doing consulting in Baja. Single, fit, shirtless in half his photos. And most importantly, very present on her feed before we got serious, then scrubbed out. But not gone. Not entirely. One photo I'd never noticed before, buried in a highlights reel from 3 years back, showed them side by side at a beach bonfire. His hand on her waist like it belonged there. Her leaning in, eyes closed. The caption? One of those nights you don't forget. I sat there staring at it, piecing it together. He wasn't new. He was a loose end. And she'd gone back to tie it off, or maybe to see if it still fit. That night, I waited until she got home. She came in humming, heels in hand, hair up like she'd just danced through a fairy tale. I was sitting at the kitchen table, the photo pulled up again, printed this time. She saw it, stopped, her face drained. Where did you get that? She asked. I looked up slowly. Melissa showed me. She didn't deny it, didn't deflect. She just blinked and said, I thought she deleted those. I could feel my jaw tighten. So it happened. Vanessa lowered herself into the chair across from me, like sitting made the truth easier to carry. I didn't mean to. Don't lie to me, I said, quieter than I expected. She hesitated. And then, she didn't. He messaged me before the trip. Said he'd be nearby. I told my mom. She said maybe it wouldn't hurt to see him. That closure is important. I stared at her. And what did you get? Closure. She didn't answer. That was the answer. There's a moment when trust doesn't just break, it vanishes. Like it never existed in the first place. This was that moment. And I realized then, it wasn't the photo that broke us. It was the fact she thought I'd never see it. That she built our wedding on a lie she assumed would stay buried in Cabo. And now, 2 days before I was supposed to marry her, I didn't know if I could walk down that aisle. The next morning was quiet. That kind of cold, dense silence that fills a house when nobody knows what to say, or when one person knows exactly what they did and the other is trying not to lose their mind. Vanessa came downstairs in a sweatshirt, no makeup, hair tied back like she was trying to shrink herself. She didn't say good morning, just poured coffee like it was any other day. I watched her, studied every movement, and all I kept thinking was, you lied to me, and you thought I'd never find out. I said, we need to talk. She nodded like she'd been waiting for that, sat across from me again, folded her hands. But I could see the tremble, small, subtle, like her body knew this conversation wouldn't end with forgiveness. Tell me everything, I said. No spin, no half-truths. Just start from the moment you booked that flight. She looked down at her hands. I didn't plan to see him, she said quietly. At least, not at first. I really did want it to be a mother-daughter trip. But once we booked the hotel, I remembered he lived nearby. And something inside me, I don't know, it cracked open. So you reached out, I said. She nodded. I told myself it was harmless, that I just needed closure. But the truth? I think I was spiraling. Everything about the wedding started feeling too perfect, too scripted. Like I was performing someone else's dream, not living mine. So you ran a test drive with your ex? Her voice was barely above a whisper. I wasn't trying to hurt you. I was trying to feel something that made sense. But instead of being honest about the doubt, I ran from it, into something that felt familiar. And your mom? I asked. She knew I'd reached out. I think she saw the panic in me and didn't want to push. She said maybe seeing him would help settle whatever storm I had in my head. Did it? Her silence was the answer. I nodded slowly. And your mom? She knew. Vanessa hesitated. Not everything, but enough. She knew I was going to see him. She encouraged it. I felt that like a punch to the ribs. Encouraged. She said everyone has doubts, and it's better to settle them before walking down the aisle than after. I leaned back, stunned. So while I was home finalizing catering menus, you were doing field research with an old flame, and your mom helped you write the syllabus? She didn't flinch, didn't argue, just whispered, I made a mistake. I was quiet for a long time. Then I said, no, a mistake is forgetting to RSVP to a vendor. This was a choice. Over and over again. She blinked hard, like she was trying not to cry. But I wasn't in the mood for tears. Not anymore. I'd already spent a night alone with that photo burned into my brain. I got up, walked over to the drawer, and pulled out the wedding binder. Set it down on the table between us. What are you doing? She asked. I need to know something, I said, flipping through the pages. Were any of these moments real to you? She looked confused. The cake tasting. The venue walkthrough. Picking out centerpieces for tables filled with people who believed in us. Were you lying to me then too? Or were you just hoping your weekend in Cabo would fade out quietly, like a summer storm? I wasn't lying then, she said quickly. I wanted to believe it could still work, that we'd move past it. But you never gave me the chance to move past it, I said, heat rising in my voice. You made the decision for me. You came back from that trip, pretended everything was fine, and you were going to stand up there and say vows you already broke in private. She looked small then, smaller than I'd ever seen her. I didn't think you'd find out, she said quietly. That right there? That was the nail in the coffin. Not the cheating, not the secrets, but that sentence, that expectation of ignorance, that belief that love means not noticing what hurts you. I picked up the binder, flipped to the guest list. My parents, her cousins, friends flying in from Seattle and Austin. People rearranging their lives to come celebrate a love that wasn't real anymore. And then I said something I never thought I'd say 2 days before a wedding. I think we need to call it off. Her breath caught. Eric, no, please. It was a mistake. A horrible, selfish mistake. But we've built so much. Don't throw it away. I shook my head. I'm not throwing it away. You did. I'm just refusing to pretend it's still whole. She stood then, moved to my side of the table, reached for my hand. I stepped back. Don't, I said. Not right now. Her shoulders sagged. Her voice barely a whisper. So what happens now? I don't know, I said honestly. But we're not getting married. Not like this. And with that, I picked up the binder and walked out the door. Not to run, not to make a scene. Just to clear my head in a world that didn't feel like it was lying to me. I needed space. Not just from her, but from the version of me who thought he had it all figured out. Because that guy? He deserved more than a woman who thought secrets made good souvenirs. The night before your wedding is supposed to feel like Christmas Eve. Butterflies. Nerves. A little too much champagne. Your closest people gathered around, raising glasses to what's about to begin. Mine felt more like a funeral. After I walked out of that house, I didn't go far. Drove to the lake. Sat there for over an hour in a parking lot with a half-broken light, listening to the water slap the rocks and trying to figure out what the hell had just happened to my life. My phone buzzed over a dozen times. Vanessa. Melissa. Her mom. I didn't answer any of them. But when Mark texted, I responded. He didn't say much, just asked where I was, told me the dinner was starting soon, and asked if I wanted him to stall. I replied, cancel it. He called right after. You sure? I can't stand in front of all those people and lie, I said. Not even for a night. There was a pause. Then he said, "I've got you." And he did. He and my cousin Sarah told the crowd I wasn't feeling well. Food poisoning. Some half-plausible excuse to keep people from asking too many questions too fast. Meanwhile, I was still sitting in that car, trying to untangle the version of Vanessa I loved from the one who stood in my kitchen and told me she didn't think I'd find out. That sentence wouldn't stop echoing. Like she'd built our marriage on the hope that her secret would stay put. Like she didn't see the difference between a betrayal and a memory. But the universe, in its twisted sense of humor, wasn't done with me yet. Around 10:45 that night, my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. "Thought you might want to see this." "I'm sorry." Attached was a video. Just 10 seconds. Vanessa. Troy. Dancing. It wasn't sexual. It wasn't explicit. But it was intimate in that way two people get when they forget the rest of the world exists. Her head on his chest. His hand on her lower back. Candlelight flickering off the ocean behind them. The file name? Cabo_lastnight.mp4. I didn't watch it twice. Didn't need to. I knew what I saw. And I knew that whatever hope I'd been holding, that maybe this was some messy misunderstanding, had just died for good. I spent the night at Mark's again. Didn't say much. He didn't press. We sat on his back porch with 2 beers and a space heater, listening to the wind roll through the trees. I told him everything. From the moment Melissa handed me her phone to the fight at the kitchen table. When I finished, he didn't offer advice. Just said, "You've already answered your own question, man." The next morning, I made the call. Venue. Florist. Caterer. One by one, I canceled everything. Some were surprised. Some were kind. A few even said they'd suspected something wasn't right, that Vanessa seemed distant, distracted during planning, that they hadn't wanted to say anything, but it didn't matter. The truth was, the wedding wasn't called off because she cheated. It was called off because she hid it. Because she looked me in the eyes and chose comfort over confession. And that's the part that never leaves you. The knowing that the person you love didn't just hurt you, they calculated your ignorance. By noon, I had 100 unread messages. Family. Friends. Her bridesmaids asking what they should do with their dresses. People wondering if they should still fly in. I sent one message to the group thread we'd made months ago. Appreciate the love. The wedding is canceled. No further details right now. Just trying to breathe. Thanks for understanding. Simple. Clean. But the ripple it caused? Massive. People started texting me privately. Stories. Suspicions. One guy, a mutual friend from college, said he remembered Vanessa mentioning Troy a year ago. Said he got the vibe something was unresolved. Another said she saw Vanessa's mom leaving a restaurant with Troy and Vanessa last month. I stared at that message for a long time. Linda knew. She'd known all along. And that, somehow, made it worse. Because it wasn't just a betrayal from Vanessa. It was a conspiracy of silence. A choice, from both of them, to build a wedding around a lie and dress it up like tradition. That afternoon, I packed a bag. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. I just drove. Took back roads until I hit the coast. Found a cheap motel with a view of the ocean and a vacancy sign that looked like it hadn't been turned off in years. Checked in. Put my phone on silent. Then I did something I hadn't done in months. I cried. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just quiet, steady tears. For the version of my life that wouldn't happen. For the woman I thought I knew. For the future we'd planned that now existed only in photos, menus, and monogrammed cocktail napkins in a box in my trunk. And somewhere in the middle of it, I realized something. The heartbreak didn't come from losing her. It came from realizing she was already gone. I stayed by the coast for 3 days. No itinerary. No grand epiphanies. Just me, a handful of lukewarm diner meals, and a notebook I kept beside the motel bed like it might start writing answers while I slept. It didn't. Mostly, I walked. Up and down the shoreline until my feet ached. Watching waves crash and thinking how they never ask permission to wreck something. They just do it. No warning. No apology. Kind of like Vanessa in the end. The phone stayed off most of the time, but I'd turn it on once a day. Just long enough to catch voicemails or texts from people trying to tiptoe around the word sorry. The third night, though, one message hit different. It wasn't from a friend. It was from Linda. Her voice, even in recording, still had that crisp, judgmental tone. The kind of woman who could smile while telling you the wine was corked and it'd somehow still feel like your fault. She said, "Eric, I think we should talk. This doesn't have to be how the story ends. Vanessa's heartbroken. She made a mistake. But mistakes don't erase everything good. You too have something worth saving. Don't throw it away over one lapse in judgment. I listened to it twice. Not because I was considering it, but because I needed to hear how far from reality she really was. She called it a lapse. Like Vanessa tripped and accidentally fell into a man's arms on a yacht. Like betrayal was just a smudge on an otherwise clean record. But the thing about smudges? They show where hands don't belong. The next morning, I checked out and headed home. Not because I missed her, I didn't, but because eventually you've got to face the fire if you want to walk out the other side. I walked into the apartment like it was a museum of a life that didn't belong to me anymore. Her jacket still on the hook. Her book face down on the coffee table. Wedding gifts stacked in the corner, wrapped in gold and ivory paper we'd picked out together. She was there, sitting on the couch. She didn't stand when I came in. Just looked at me with red eyes and said, "You left." I had to, I said. "You left long before I did. I just didn't notice." There was a long silence. Then she said something I didn't expect. "My mom said you'd forgive me, that you were too stable to blow this up." I looked at her. Really looked. And I realized she never understood me. She'd built this story in her head of the dependable man who'd stick around no matter what, who'd sweep things under the rug because he was scared of the mess. But I wasn't afraid of the mess. I was afraid of building a life on top of one. "I'm not angry anymore," I told her. "I'm just done." She started to cry. And for the first time since all this began, I didn't feel pulled toward her. Didn't feel guilty. Didn't feel like fixing it. I just stood there, letting the silence between us stretch long and wide, the shape of everything we'd lost. She asked, "Is this really it?" I nodded. "You loved me in theory, but not in practice. And I need both." There was a quiet kind of peace in that moment, not because it didn't hurt, but because I finally stopped lying to myself. About her. About us. About what we were really building. She offered to stay with her mom for a while, give me space to figure out what came next. I didn't argue. That night, I boxed up the wedding stuff. Every piece of it. The invitations. The favors. The custom cake topper with our initials. I didn't burn them. Didn't trash them. I just packed them away. Because sometimes healing doesn't mean destroying the past. It just means not letting it live in your present anymore. I slept better that night than I had in weeks. Not because everything was fixed, but because I was finally done trying to hold together a life she'd already let go of. And when I woke up, I made a decision. One more call. One last piece of unfinished business. I picked up the phone and called Melissa, the friend with the photo. The friend who, without knowing it, cracked the illusion wide open. She answered, voice cautious. "Hey," she said. "You okay?" I told her I wasn't sure. Then I asked her something that had been bugging me ever since that night. "Why'd you show me that picture?" She was quiet for a second, then said, "Because I thought you already knew. Vanessa told us you two had an agreement, that you were open, casual." She made it sound like Cabo was just part of that. My stomach dropped. She actually said that? Melissa sighed. "Yeah, she mentioned it weeks ago, real offhand, like, Eric's chill, we're not old-fashioned like that." I didn't question it. I thought, maybe you two had boundaries I didn't get. That hurt in a way the photo hadn't. Because it meant she wasn't just hiding what happened. She was building a story, preloading an excuse, and rewriting who I was, just in case the truth ever leaked. There it was. Not just betrayal, not just lies, but character assassination to make the cheating easier to stomach. That hurt in a way the photo hadn't. Because it meant she wasn't just hiding it from me. She was rewriting who I was to everyone else. There's a moment after the fall, after the shouting stops, after the ring is off, after you've canceled the chair rentals and boxed up the party favors, when the world doesn't quite know what to do with you. People don't ask if you're okay. Not really. They ask if you're hanging in there, like you're gripping a ledge and just trying not to let go. Like survival is the goal. But I wasn't trying to hang on anymore. I was trying to let go on purpose. A week after the canceled wedding, I found myself back at the venue. Not because I had unfinished business, but because I needed to see it with new eyes without the illusion of forever hanging over it. The barn was empty. The staff had cleared out the setup. All that was left were shadows and scuff marks from a celebration that never happened. I stood where we were supposed to exchange vows, where I once imagined slipping a ring on her finger, and I thought about how close I'd come to marrying a stranger who wore the mask of someone I loved. Then I pulled the envelope from my jacket pocket, the one I hadn't opened until that morning. Vanessa had left it on the kitchen counter the day she moved out. Handwritten. 2 pages. No stamp. No envelope seal. Just her name in cursive, like that alone was enough to be forgiven. I opened it there, under those string lights we'd picked out together. Inside, her words. I never thought I'd be the one to ruin something good. But I did. And now I have to live with that. She talked about the trip. About how seeing Troy again unearthed things she thought she'd buried. Not feelings, not love, but doubt. The kind that creeps in quietly and makes everything feel too tight, too final. She admitted she didn't know how to tell me she was scared. So instead, she sabotaged. That old, cowardly trick people pull when they don't want to be the villain, but don't have the strength to be honest either. She wrote, I thought I could come back and pretend, but you looked at me like I was still the woman you met. And that made it worse. Because I wasn't. Not anymore. The last line stuck with me. You were always home, Eric. I just didn't know how to stay in one place. I folded the letter. Didn't cry. Didn't rage. Just exhaled. Because sometimes closure isn't a conversation. It's reading someone's last words and realizing they're not asking for a second chance. They're just trying to explain why they blew the first one. That weekend, I went to my dad's house. The man who raised me on blue-collar wisdom and coffee shop philosophy. We sat on his porch, and he listened while I told him everything. When I finished, he nodded and said, You don't have to marry someone just because you already bought the suit. Then he looked me in the eye and said, But you do have to live with the person you become if you ignore what you know is true. That stuck with me. Because I've been trying so hard to forgive, to understand, to find a way to make it all mean something. But the meaning was simple. She lied. I didn't. And that difference wasn't a wound, it was a compass. So I started over. Quietly. Intentionally. Deleted the wedding playlist. Took down the framed, save the date from the fridge. Donated the matching mugs that said wifey and hubby. Reclaimed my space one drawer, one photo, one memory at a time. A month later, I booked a solo trip to Arizona. Desert air. Red rock. No itinerary. The first morning, I hiked a canyon trail and ended up sitting on the edge of a cliff, watching the sunrise spill over the rocks. No distractions. No ghosts. Just me and the sound of wind moving through something ancient. And in that silence, I thought. She was never the ending I deserved. She was just the lesson I had to live through. I came home different. Not colder. Not harder. Just clearer. Friends stopped asking if I was okay. They saw it in how I moved, how I laughed again. And one by one, they started saying things like, I'm proud of you, and that couldn't have been easy. It wasn't. But it was necessary. And in the end, that was enough. Vanessa and I haven't spoken since. No long phone call. No, let's grab coffee and see where we stand. Just silence. The kind that settles when two people finally stop trying to rewrite the ending. I heard through the grapevine she moved back to her hometown. Started working for a boutique marketing firm. Good for her. Truly. Because I'm not bitter anymore. I'm not carrying her decision like a stone in my chest. I let it go. All of it. And now? When I think about love, it's not about fireworks or passion or trying to keep things interesting. It's about showing up, telling the truth, choosing someone, even when life gets boring or hard or messy. And someday, when I meet someone who chooses me back, fully, with both feet in, and no unfinished business stuffed into a suitcase, I'll know what real love feels like. It won't need a folder full of proof. It'll need nothing hidden, nothing tested. Just two people, already sure. And this time, I won't be standing alone outside a ballroom with a phone in my hand and a heart full of questions. This time, I'll be home.